Dragon balls, neon ray guns, lightsabers, blasters. All sophisticated use of weapons that we so often see in sci-fi movies today. Perhaps this is the future of tomorrow's world of weaponry. Since time unknown, weapons have played an important role in the manifestation of power and territorial authority. Strategic use of weaponry has been instrumental in the rise and fall of several empires all over the world. Interestingly, India, a country that has always promoted the message of peace and harmony to the world, has also been a battlefield for many violent wars. The frequent battles within and invasions from outside brought about the invention of different kinds of weapons. Although ancient Hindu legends are rife with stories about kings and their fondness for weapons, thousands of years ago, when man was just becoming aware of his existence, things were very different. In the early days, man solely relied on the gifts bestowed to him by nature. For him, his teeth, nails and fists seemed the only useful things for survival. But as time progressed and needs increased, he also realized that he could make tools from the stones around him as well as animal bones. Several other tools like scrapers, choppers and hand axes are displayed in Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya. Though initially tools were used to help in fulfilling the basic needs of day-to-day life, soon man started to discover new use of these tools. Territorial wars were quite common, so defending himself from other competitors meant sharpening his skills on the craft of weaponry. Thus, he slowly graduated from mere hunting tools to carving and molding weapons. Into different heads. The Mukta, the Amukta and the Mukta Amukta. Mukta means weapons that are released either by hand or with the help of mechanical devices. The bows and arrows are the chief weapons of the Mukta group. Sometimes the long steel swords would be coated with poison, and the Mahouts would charge with them into the enemy ranks. Alexander, in his quest to conquer the East, crossed over the Indus. But his army met with a death they had never imagined, under the feet of the Indian elephant. The gallery at Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Takya, Yataghan, and Kilij. There is an interesting fact stated in the Ain-e-Akbari about Emperor Akbar's fondness for his swords. Abul Fazl, Akbar's friend and advisory, describes that all of Akbar's weapons were allotted names and special rankings. He had 30 Khasa swords and 40 Kotal swords. Every night he would take with him one sword to his sleeping chamber. In the morning, the sword would be sent back and would have to wait in line until the time its turn came again. Akbar took his swordsmanship very seriously and practiced every day with it. He also personally supervised the production of his arms and armory. Another very interesting type of sword was the Nagan, which literally meant female snake. To make the blade strong and flexible, it was treated alternately in acid and water, which resulted in watermarks on the blade indicating its high quality. Weapons were regarded by the ruling class not just as a symbol of power, but also as a status symbol. The Rajputs held their weapons in great regard and never went to war without doing the Kamal Puja first, in which weapons were worshipped with a fervent devotion. One of the important parts of the sword is the hilt. The hilt in lay terms is basically the grip of a sword, which allows the user to maneuver the sword with agility. Hilts come in various shapes like the basket hilt, the Aurangzebi hilt, the parrot-headed hilt, tiger-headed hilt, ram-headed hilt, horse-headed hilt, and many others. They are made of metal and usually cast using a very elaborate process in which the lark from the peepal tree plays an important role. Each of these hilts is created for a specific purpose. The basket hilt, for instance, was padded so it could absorb the shock of the blows. The gauntlet hilt found on the Maratha Patta, which is also known as the Danda Patta, covers the wrist and arm up to the elbow. One of the other weapons that found its place in history is the dagger. Although it was never really considered a military weapon, the dagger was used in open fighting when the warrior was unable to gain access to his sword. Most warriors always kept a dagger handy for self-defense. Different kinds of daggers were used in those days. All of these had their own deadly purposes to serve. The aim was surely to kill, but some did that brutally. One such important weapon was Jamdhar. The word Jamdhar is named after Yama, the god of death. Shown here is one of the deadly varieties of Jamdhar, where all three blades are folded together, appearing to be one. When plunged into the victim, the handlebars were pressed together and opened up instantly, killing the victim. The Khanjar and the Bichwa too were widely used. But one weapon that claims a special mention in history of the Maratha rule was the Wagnak, or tiger's claw. Most of you know the story of how Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj killed his enemy Afzal Khan with the help of Wagnak. Another weapon called the maru became one of the warriors' favorite on the battlefield during the medieval period. As you can see, the points sticking out at either ends are antelope horns which have been fastened together and tipped with steel to deliver a deathly strike. In ancient India, the mace, also known as the Ghoda, was a tricky device, and if not used with precision, had the capacity to hurt its wielder too. Later on, it was attached to a long spear and hurled at soldiers. It was also used in close combats. If aimed correctly, the mace had the strength to even crush a skull, and was also used to break the armors of the soldiers. In mythology too, Hanuman and Bhim were synonymous with their Gadas. Over the centuries, many different kinds of weapons were invented. Even so, the bow and arrow holds a prominent place in being the first composite weapon devised by man. This fact is clearly stated in the Dhanurveda, where the bow and arrow were considered principal weapons of war in those times. They were mainly made from wood, cane and bamboo. Archery in India was not just used for defense, but also regarded as a specialized game. Many legends mentioned how the grooms won the hands of their brides in marriage using the skills of archery, a feat that has been mentioned in the scriptures of Ramayana and Mahabharata. One such talked about feat is that of the great archer Arjuna. Arjuna was known for his power of focus. The story goes that one day, Guru Dronacharya decided to test his students in their skill of archery. He hung a wooden bird from the branch of a tree and then summoned his students. He asked the first one to aim for the bird's eye, but not shoot just yet. He then asked the student what the student could see. The student replied that he could see the garden, the tree, flowers, etc. Drona asked him to step aside and not shoot. He repeated the same process with a few other students. When it was Arjuna's turn, Arjuna told his guru that the only thing he could see was the bird's eye. This satisfied the guru and he allowed Arjuna to shoot the bird. Who can forget this famous scene from the Ramayana? Over the 10 days that the war of good versus evil was fought, thousands of arrows were exchanged between both sides. Some covered with deadly poison, some with fire, and some that were specially gifted from the gods, like the Shakti Ban, which fatally wounded Lakshmana. Even today, many tribes in India use bow and arrows. You might have heard the phrase, hand in glove. The sword and shield too share a similar relationship. You can't talk about one without mentioning the other, and rightly so. After all, many wounds have been avoided on the battlefield because of these strong and protective walls. Shields in those days were either made out of tortoise shell, rhinoceros hide, leather, or complete steel. Every shield was a masterpiece on its own. And the magnificence of this lacquered artwork, which depicted hunting scenes and geometrical patterns, glorifies not just the craftsmanship of that era, but also the beauty that encompassed it. Emperor Akbar's shield even had his name engraved on it. Besides the shield, the protective armor too has played a very important role in ancient warfare. Weapons have been instrumental in retaining the glory of many wars over time. But imagine using deadly weapons without proper protection? That's where the use of armor became crucial to the survival of soldiers on the battlefield. Armors differed from kingdom to kingdom. In various parts, soldiers wore tough, sturdy armor made of interlocking iron, steel, and leather plates. The popular and sturdy armor in use was the char aina. The 4-plate body armor protected the upper part of the body. It consisted of breastplate, backplate, and narrow side plates. On the arms, the soldier wore a gauntlet commonly called bajuband. Some of them carried the gauntlet sword for its dual use, especially the cavalry. Helmet was also worn to protect the head. Most of the helmets had a nose guard and chain of iron mails attached to cover the neck. But with innovations came several problems. The metal armory was extremely expensive, heavy, and tedious. And so it was that armor made out of steel threads was invented. It is believed that India was the first nation to discover gunpowder. The Mahabharata and Ramayana also frequently mention the use of firearms known as Agneastras. Coincidentally, the Agni Bana was considered to be the forerunner of a gunshot. But the authentic use of firearms can be traced to as early as 1299 AD, when Sange Maghrabi cannons were used. About a century and a half later, Babur's success in India was chiefly the result of the use of firearms and artillery. The types of artillery used by Babur have become much of a legend now. Babur used the matchlock, commonly known as tufang or banduk, and called his light artillery guns Shatrunal or the camel-mounted gun. The matchlock guns were huge in size and were fired by resting the gun on someone else's shoulder. One can't help but wonder if the modern-day phrase, "Don't use my shoulders to fire your gun," originated because of this function. During the British rule, the Ghoda pistols came into existence and were used mainly for hunting. In the later period, composite firearms came into existence. These firearms were mainly pistol battle axes combined. These types of composite firearms were found with the Santhal tribe in the 19th century. This weapon was also very popular because of its lightweight. It's a known fact that Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj had an artillery department called Topkhana and used to import his guns from the Europeans. Cannons were widely used during the medieval period, and most forts were well equipped with several cannons on the topmost level, from where sighting and attacking the enemy involved little effort. The conventions of warfare might have changed over time, but they have been carried forward from our history into our present in various forms. Some for recreational purposes and some to retain the tradition. We live in a contradictory world today, where man's quest to attain peace is visible all over the world, and yet the urge of human to create newer means of destruction has not ceased. If not kept in check, the coming age might see these modern weapons creating a great deal of havoc. So let's just hope that the journey of arms and ammunition, which began with the simple urge of collecting food for survival, does not become the reason for our doom in future.